Hello, Ryan here, aka Mac, and welcome. Today we are going to be taking a look at all the features and deliverables which had work ending in the month of June. As always, a huge thank you to all of my patrons and channel members. Thank you guys so much for the support, and if you do appreciate my videos, please do consider subscribing and helping the channel to grow. So each month I like to put together a video that takes a look at all of the work that is kicking off each month but also finishing each month, just to keep us all more informed as to what work is going on in the background. Now before we get to it, just because a feature on the progress tracker has work beginning or completing in a particular month does not necessarily mean it'll be releasing that quarter, the next quarter, or even in that year, as there could still be more work required from other teams. For example, the downstream teams like audio, visual effects, and so on. Or even priorities can shift and that feature can get pushed back until needed later on. It is, however, a good guide to see what could potentially come to the persistent universe when, but at the very least, it does show us what work is being scheduled and done at what time in the year. So with that said, let us take a look at all of the deliverables and features that have work ending in the month of June. And this is going to be a long one, so grab a drink, grab some snacks, and settle in. So first up, we have the AR and map marker system rework. Now this involves converting these systems to work with building blocks, and I'm pretty sure that they're a necessary change for when the new star map and FPS map comes along, allowing players to place markers on the map to return to later being one massive quality of life update. Great if you found a large quantity of Quantanium, for example, and you don't have enough room to mine it all. Or maybe you found a location of a wreck or a cave and you want to return to it easily. A great improvement that cannot come soon enough. Now in regards to AR, or augmented reality, I'm not sure how this is going to work, but it could be pretty cool if you're able to scan something and then on your HUD it'll pop up with some more information. Personally, the map and this really cannot come soon enough. I'm thankful that the map rework looks to complete next month, so it doesn't look like we're going to be waiting too long, and the work on this particular feature should have literally just ended, so hopefully we will be getting a look-see at all of this progress, although I do have a feeling CIG might be keeping this one close to their hearts for a bigger reveal. My fingers are crossed for the new star map, the AR and map marker system rework for 3.18. I think it's plausible, but we will see. The next feature is called Visor and Lens Rework, which is converting the helmet visors and contact lens systems to building blocks for improved performance and flexibility. So firstly, this will mean that our HUDs and our UI will be more consistent and less buggy, plus easier and quicker for CIG to alter or add to as and when needed. But I'm also assuming this conversion will be necessary for the player interaction experience tier 2, in which the visor HUD and helmets are getting a massive change, with the ability to remove, carry and inspect your helmets, having a boot up and power down sequence for each HUD, but I also hope that it means more of a bespoke HUD for the various professions out there. So getting it converted to building blocks will be the first step, and that should be done by now. However, the player interaction experience tier 2 work does go on till December. Now the hospital surgeon is next. Not anything too exciting, but helping to further flesh out the look and believability of the various hospitals found throughout the verse. For this deliverable in particular, it starts with the Orison General Hospital. Now the work here should have already come to completion, as it finished at the beginning of June. Now moving on, the next deliverable is called Lockable Containers, and as you can imagine, this will be the addition of having containers of various types with either physical or electronic locks, which can be opened via a key, forced open via cutting, destroying, or hacking. Now with persistent entity streaming on the way, and the ability to literally leave anything anywhere and have it persist practically forever, I feel that there is a big importance of having lockable stashes, not to mention how this could be a great addition for all the various missions out there. Having some rare loot locked inside a chest that the players either need to break into or find a key code or that kind of stuff. Which we are actually seeing with the Siege of Orison. I suppose that might be the first version of this, with those big containers that you need to find keycodes. Although I suppose the prison Ursa Rover locker would... Anyway, I digress. Nice to hear that there will be many various methods of getting inside, and not just one or two like we see with many other games, as choice is a big part of Star Citizen, and how you prepare or plan for a mission becoming more and more imperative. So I'm really looking forward to seeing these lockable containers come into game, and thankfully the work appears to have just been completed, so I don't think we're going to be waiting too long. Now next up, the feature is called Shops and Patrons, and this is actually a feature that was scheduled to release in a recent patch, but since got removed. Now the work on this feature continued, however, in the background, and should be completing right at the end of June after 67 weeks of work from 7 different teams. Now this, it says, is vastly expanding the interactive usables needed for an assortment of shops and patrons. They will be populating dozens of shops with the vendor behavior that we saw with the bartender and more recently the coffee vendor at ArtCorp. So quite the undertaking, and hopefully as they begin driving more of the AI using subsumption and less spline driven, we will begin to see more detail here. But of course, server degradation will still be an issue until they resolve that. The next feature we have is called Frontier Clothing, and this again isn't anything majorly exciting. However, these outfits are meant for what the residents of the Pyro system will be wearing, so for me, it's pretty cool to see. Plus, I personally prefer the Frontier style over anything else that we have in-game currently. Gives me that Firefly vibe, so I'm looking forward to helping to define my character a little more in the style that I want, and we did see some concept work for these on a recent Inside Star Citizen sprint report. But according to the progress tracker, it should be now complete as the work ended mid-June. Following on from the previous card, we have Stanton Fashion Clothing, which completed right at the beginning of June, and this is the creation of additional fashion outfits, both masculine and feminine, for the Stanton system. Again, not overly fussed here, but I do love the depth of customization that we will have when all is said and done, as expressing oneself in-game is going to matter, to me anyway. Now, the next feature is called Theatres of War Miscellaneous Support. Now, personally, I have just put Theatres of War to the back of my mind and kept it hidden away for so long now. All I can think is that they're trying to reduce the on-foot desync before releasing it, as it was pretty problematic during the few Evocati playtests that they had. And hopefully with this on-foot desync improvement coming to 3.17.2, it might mean that Theatres of War is now back on the table. This miscellaneous support states ongoing art, design and engineering tasks to support the Theatres of War game mode, which I suppose could be any number of things, including the desync fixes perhaps. And by the way, if you don't know what Theatres of War is, as I know a lot of you might be quite new, it is kind of a game within the game world. So like Star Marine and Arena Commander is a game within the persistent universe, but it's more like a Battlefield combined arms game. Looked incredible, but has not been mentioned for quite a long while. Is this a sign that Theatres of War is raising its head again? I get the feeling that it is, but I'm not going to hold my breath. Anyway, they had 79 weeks work on this, which should have completed right at the end of June. So Alpha 3.16 brought with it the very first planetary river, which is very beautiful. And as with any new feature in Star Citizen, it is only the very first version and will continue to develop and evolve as time goes on. One thing the Planet Tech team have been working on for 13 weeks is underwater rendering and caustics, which is adding increased planet visual quality and realism for underwater flora and fauna. So this work completed earlier in June according to the progress tracker and should help to bring the bodies of water on planets, be that rivers, lakes, basins and oceans, to a much more realistic level of quality. I also love how it mentions fauna. I'm guessing this will begin with fish maybe and evolve from there for the various planets when the time comes to creating them. Really looking forward to seeing how this can enhance the planets and the water on the planets, and hopefully it's something that can just roll out in a near-term patch. Now moving on to ships and vehicles, first up we have the Misc Hull C. We did just see the Misc Hull B, D and E get taken off the progress tracker temporarily due to the tech constraints and lack of resources, but thankfully the Hull C did remain. This is your mid-tier dedicated hauler from Misc, which has been in the works on and off for years now, and we know it is literally at the point of completion, and with the cargo refactor expected for 3.18 at the end of September, I'm kind of betting that this is the patch that the Hull C makes an appearance. Fingers crossed it does, and it can be used as intended to make lots of cash for its very patient owners, as they really do deserve a win after waiting so long. Now, there are 2 unannounced vehicles on the progress tracker completing their work in June. The first one had 24 weeks work from 5 different teams, including the downstream teams like audio and visual effects. So my guess would be that this is a straight to drivable or flyable vehicle. The other one had 3 weeks work from 3 teams, including the concept art team. So my thoughts for this one is that it is a concept sale. When will these vehicles arrive? I have absolutely no idea. Maybe for 3.17.2, more likely for 3.18 or some other event. The Foundation Festival is planned this month, so it could be for that. But if I was to take a complete stab in the dark at what I think the straight-to-flyable or drivable vehicle would be, I would say something salvage-orientated, like a ground salvage vehicle. But that is literally just a guess. Do let me know what you think it'll be in the comments below. Whatever they are, I am looking forward to learning more about them whenever they are revealed. Okay, so let's move on to tech and tools completing work in June. First up is one that I am extremely excited for, probably my favourite feature of this list. It is called Physical Damage and Breakability, which says, making use of the physics engine to create a system that looks and behaves realistically when large objects such as ships are damaged by weaponry or colliding with other ships, locations, or planets. Now, this has been in the works for a long time, and it is so important to many aspects of Star Citizen, like salvaging, repair, engineering, and just gameplay in general, not to mention the economy. For example, a player may crash into a planet or asteroid or space station, rendering their ship disabled, and if they then choose not to repair it and claim a new ship on the insurance, it then becomes free salvage and will persist in whatever state it was left in. So players could happen upon it, raid it for cargo, personal effects, salvage it for scrap, or if it is still in a repairable state, they could claim it and then repair it back to usable. Another example could be if you accidentally hit something, having to physically locate that damage, which will be doable by sight alone, as it is physically represented in the location the damage was received, and fix it up. And then this will all tie into the economy, as all items and ships are made up of a recipe of sorts, some simpler than others, and those materials required must be gathered either by resource collection, starting with mining and so forth, so someone heading out and mining those goods, or buying from someone who has already gone to that trouble, which in turn, if there is X amount of ships out there, player-owned or NPC-owned, I'm sure there will be plenty of damage getting taken that will require fixing. So those raw materials will need to be gathered, refined, transported and delivered, all before the player needing them can use them to fix up the damage. So this is a huge undertaking where they will be working out all the various materials that go into everything, not just ships, and having that damage realistically visible on everything. And the work on physical damage and breakability should have come to an end early in June after 73 weeks work. I am so excited to see the fruits of this labour. Hopefully for 3.18, I mean, we are seeing quite a bit of the new tech and the masks or the damage maps on the ships now, but it will be phenomenal to see the depth that this goes to, and hopefully 3.18 will have the majority of it, if not all of it, but I'm pretty certain that persistent entity streaming tech is needed for it to be truly possible, especially when ships are just crashing into planets or being disabled and then becoming free salvage. They need to persist. One piece of tech that I'm interested in seeing how it evolves is called Physics Rope Simulation. This feature kind of popped in out of nowhere, likely for a section in Squadron 42 requiring a rope pulley system, so that might have been what encouraged CIG to look further into creating realistic rope physics, as the card does say, extended the simulation algorithm of ropes to support ropes interacting with pulleys and improve general stability to enable the development of new gameplay mechanics. So it sounds like once the pulley mechanics needed in Squadron are done, they will do some more research into where else this tech can be applied. And I'm really hopeful to see a full-on climbing option using ropes like abseiling or mountaineering to some degree, as it was mentioned a short while back that they know the method used currently for scaling or climbing is not versatile or scalable in a procedurally generated universe. So I'm expecting some pretty interesting mechanics to come from this that will hopefully mean climbing and exploring around difficult to reach places that could even evolve into something more along the lines of a rock climbing simulation mechanic. I mean, I can dream. Leave me to my dreams and watch this space. It was kind of shown in the Carrack commercial, someone abseiling, so fingers are crossed. But anyway, after 23 weeks work, this feature came to an end for the physics team earlier in June. So the next tool is called Audio to Animation Toolset, and this says the development of a toolset to analyze .wav audio files and create matching believable facial animations that work with the game's current rigs. So it sounds like they are aiming to hook audio to animations more accurately which if this is the case, I'm all for it. I would love to see what quality they can get to with actual physical audio expressions that match up with the animations. It did have 65 weeks work, quite significant undertaking that came to an end mid to late June. Now the next two we have are dedicated game server deliverables. The first one is the dedicated game server, or DGS crash recovery, and this system will basically spin up a replacement server and restore its state from the replication layer. So what this means is, instead of the dreaded 30k error, which is a little less dreaded right now thanks to the kind of server snapshot system or whatever they've called it, which is great, but not ideal and only temporary. But instead of a 30k stopping everything and practically resetting everything, this will just spin up a brand new server and restore everything as it was from the previous server to the new one. So ships, the state of the ships, the player's state, your location, everything back to where it was, allowing us to simply continue on as if nothing happened. And hopefully now that the 18 weeks work on this is coming to an end, it means we could see this recovery system come to the persistent universe very soon. The next DGS deliverable is called Dgs Mesh Node, which had 48 weeks work, and says this implements multiple dedicated game servers and clients connected to the same instance of the hybrid service, and allows DGS to exchange entities and authority over them. So getting the ability for dedicated game servers to share and exchange information, a necessary component of server meshing. So very happy to hear that this is coming to a close, getting one step closer to this all-important piece of tech that hopefully we will see in the PTU by the end of the year. So also finishing in June, and hopefully done now according to the progress tracker, is this Gen 12 renderer conversion. This should have completed earlier in the month and will mean that all the legacy rendering is gone and replaced with CIG's own in-house renderer, which they call Gen 12. Now this not only provides some performance gains, but also opens the door for a lot more, including the Vulkan API. Now I'm really hoping that 3.17.2 brings the full Gen 12 renderer with no legacy code anymore, as we have seen with each patch, more and more of the renderer getting converted, which, as we have heard, once complete, should provide some significant performance increases. So here's hoping for 3.17.2 for the full Gen 12 renderer, but it's probably more likely going to be 3.18. Next up, we have the login flow. This is improving the login performance to allow for more stability and easier analysis of errors, as well as improvements to queue that will help streamline the login process, particularly in instances of high concurrency. And this had 46 weeks work, which should be done by now, and will certainly make our lives better when trying to log into the game, as many players, I understand, are still having issues connecting, let alone the queuing when times get busy when we have free flies and whatnot. So a great piece of tech that really cannot come soon enough. Now the next tech deliverable is called Long-Term Persistence Enhancements. Now this says changes to the long-term persistence, which is what we currently have in game now, that remember things like ship state and inventory and so on, that will support the new inventory and shard database. Long-term persistence functionality will stay the same, they say, but the system will read and write the data from the new entity graph database instead. So likely something that will come along for 3.18 when persistent entity streaming is in, utilizing the entity graph database, which should make things a lot more consistent and accurate when saving and restoring our inventory, for example. But with a wipe coming in 3.17.2, I wonder if any of this is kind of coming in for 3.17.2 as well. If anyone can shed a little bit more light on this in the comments below, I would appreciate it. Now moving on, we have the name resolving API next, which states engine implementation for an entity class name resolving service. Now, I'm not entirely certain what this is for. I think it is for when we name our ships, the font size being able to scale to the number of letters used, or whether maybe it's to do with the entity graph and the naming of or storing of entities by name accurately. Again, do let me know in the comments if you know for certain, but the work here lasted 22 weeks and should have completed already. And the final piece of tech is Subsumption Editor integration, and this says recreating the Subsumption Editor's functionality inside the engine to allow easier setup and debugging subsumption logic for the designers. So Subsumption being the system that drives the AI behaviors, and this tool is getting the functionality of setting up AI behaviors in the engine to allow the designers to use it. So it simplifies the process and increases the range of users. Similar to what we saw, I suppose, with Building Blocks UI, empowering the designers creating the feature to create their own UI rather than them awaiting the UI designers to free up. So hopefully this Subsumption editor integration will speed up the process of setting up AI in-game for the various missions and such, empowering the actual designers creating the mission to do what they want it to. Well, that's what I gather from it anyway. So talking of AI, let us just briefly run through some AI functions that came to a close in June. Firstly, we have the AI arcade machines, and we've heard about this quite a bit of late, which is hooking up the AI behaviors to use arcade machines, and the work on this should have finished early in the month. The next AI is Untrained Combat, which will create the ability for civilian AI to use weapons to defend themselves from threatening situations. This is for Squadron and the persistent universe, and will likely be seen at places like settlements, farms, mining outposts where civilians are living, and if attacked by a pirate, they will likely grab what they can and fight. But they might not be as capable as fully trained AI combatants. Now I see this kind of unfolding like Fallout 4's settlement management system, like when we go to a settlement or a village and they get attacked by raiders, watching as the residents bear arms or pick up tools and fight back. This deliverable actually had 64 weeks work, which is a pretty big undertaking, and I'm very happy to see that the work for this came to a close earlier in June. I also suspect that if we don't see this in Squadron 42 first, we will hopefully be seeing NPCs slugging it out with pirates at the upcoming settlements in Stanton or Pyro. I may help them. I might first just want to watch and see how it all unfolds and then loot as I go. Now the final AI deliverable is called AI Usable System version 2, which improves the implementation of the existing usable system to optimize the memory usage and improve the performance when querying usable data at runtime. So basically optimizing the AI, as I'm sure in any single scene involving NPCs, many if not all of them will be interacting with some form of usable, so ensuring the process is as optimized as possible will be quite a necessity, and this system had 23 weeks work that ended early to mid-June. And finally, we have Squadron 42 features. First up, we have the Animatable Gunner Helmet, which does say it's for both Squadron and the Persistent Universe, and this is an animated and EVA-capable version of the Gunner Helmet. I do wonder if this is to be the test helmet for the updated Visor HUD, plus it does sound like the first animated helmet, changing the states as the player needs it. I think the world of helmets in Star Citizen this year, or maybe early next year, will be getting a huge change-up, and I'm really ready for it. The Archon Station is next, which is the super large asteroid mining space station, and this has kind of been on the work finishing list for some time now. It keeps getting extended, so it must be quite an undertaking. I suppose considering it's over 6 kilometers in length, it is understandable. But this did have 78 weeks work and should have finished by the end of June, but we will see if it still requires more work into July and beyond. Next for Squadron, we have a whole slew of Squadron 42 chapters that appear to be completing at the end of June, and these are chapters 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 18, 19, 20, 22, 23, 25, and 26. So the vast majority, in fact, which involve designing, implementing, and iterating on each chapter, which are actually all the chapters now complete by the looks of things. And if I were to guess, which is just a guess, as a novice who has no experience designing games, I think that this could mean that the full game that they're working on now will be playable from start to finish, as we have heard about many aspects of the game being playable, but still requiring polish and balance and maybe some work from downstream teams like audio and VFX and so on. So maybe getting Squadron to that beta state, which was mentioned in a monthly report recently. But it is great to see that all the chapters have work finished, but again, this could be extended if there is more work. It could be that they haven't extended that section of the progress tracker. Of course, if it does extend, I will continue to update it all. Now, character work is up next, and this is the creation and implementation of various characters in Squadron 42, including art, animation, and AI behavior. This had 67 weeks work from 11 different teams, and now completed hopefully means all the relevant characters are final. The next feature does follow on from this, which is called Enemy Characters, which says encompasses all tasks related to enemy factions characters in Squadron 42. So again, completing all the Squadron 42 characters, likely getting them to a final state. So great progress here, and let us hope that they actually show us this quality of character. I would love to see what they look like compared to last we saw on, I suppose, the briefing room. Now, the final two features are both locations in Squadron, both of which we did see in the vertical slice. The first one is called Chemline, which is the abandoned extraction facility on Gainey in the Odin system, which is this facility we are taken to where the slavers are holding up. Not sure what more they wanted to do with this location, but I'm sure the difference will be quite significant since we last saw it, and likely have them hooking up all the new systems, things like resource management and so on, so players can use power and lighting and gravity and life support to aid their entrance. The final feature and second location feature is the moon called Gainey, which, when we saw it in the vertical slice, did look pretty damn cool, but it was also mentioned by Chris Roberts during the vertical slice that this moon is supposed to be kind of wrought with storms. So I suspect the next time we do see it, storms will be blowing in, making maybe flight more challenging perhaps, and reducing visibility. I just really hope that the storm doesn't blow our ship away when we land. That would be very embarrassing. So there you go, that is the huge amount of work that came to completion last month. So many heavily important features and systems, and for me, the hype features, aside from Squadron 42, are the physical damage and breakability, of course, the map AR markers and such, which will be a great addition to the new star map whenever that does come along. Also, seeing that the Gen 12 conversion should be complete now, and lots of dedicated game server progress as well. I do feel it's time the persistent universe is going to start getting much more stable once we do get through the onboarding process of all the various pieces of tech, as I'm sure that is going to be pretty shaky to begin with. But that is all the work that came to a close in June. So much work, but with that said, if you do enjoy my videos, please do consider subscribing and helping the channel to grow. Also, come and hang out over at twitch.tv/supermacbrother. You are all more than welcome to come and hang out with us all there. I will be back to streaming normally next week. Hit the thumbs up if you don't mind, it does the channel a big favour, and tick that notification bell if you would like to be notified when my videos go live. Again, a huge thank you to my patrons and channel members. Thank you for all the support, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.